I thought that I would, I've been thinking about how calling this approach to our body mind, calling it yin yoga, it doesn't seem to really hold all of it. And I was thinking I would much rather just call it long, slow, and deep. So let's prepare for our long, slow, and deep practice. And I've been doing quite a bit of just contemplating lately, just a lot of different things. But I've been just thinking about sort of the progression of just my life in many contexts, and how it's become very interesting to me is how I'm feeling like most of my growth these days, if not all of my growth, it just appears that the less I put effort into it, the less I think that I can navigate it myself with some sort of direction, that it just unfolds before me. And I don't know if this is just just age and youth, but I think also it's a direct consequence of really committing to subtlety and nuance and sensitivity in one's life, in just how we approach what is the immediacy of our direct experience, and seeing that there's always something to be learned, that every experience that is presented, there is a learning. And we don't need to bring more information, and we don't need to bring more maps, but simply this sensitivity. And this sensitivity then becomes, in a way, our practice. So I was sitting on my porch the other afternoon and just gazing out upon the forest, nothing particular happening except the beauty of the forest, and the sound and the feeling of the wind and the warmth of the sunshine. And it just occurred to me in just a moment of, you might say, inspiration, just how incredibly peaceful I was feeling in that moment. And it came to me so clearly that if you're not feeling true peace in the moment right now, then you're not going to. If you're not feeling a sense of your essential enlightenment right now, that you're not going to. If you're not experiencing a quality of wisdom that comes from a sense of clarity, you're not going to. Because time is conceptual, and seeking is in itself the obstacle. And the future is an illusion, and it is a delusion. So allow us to spend some of this time just being grounded, just in this present, a beautiful conscious moment, and allow all of the conceptual frameworks to rest, all of what we think we know to fade back, and just allow your peace and your sense of inner enlightenment and your sense of wisdom to just allow it to just very organically arise within you. And now the contemplation of yoga. So let's come into lying on your side with your knees pulled up to your chest comfortably in what we call a fetal position. You've all done this one before at some point early on. So come into a fetal position. It's nice to support your neck so the head isn't dangling down. So we have no strain in the neck at all. Again, let the knees come up to the chest comfortably. So there's a little bit of pull into the digestive area, but not a lot. And then any other adjustments you might want to make. Sometimes it's nice to put a blanket or a cushioning between the knees so they're not compressing. And just make yourself as relaxed and as comfortable as possible. Allow your awareness to just very naturally weave into your breathing. So this is a very beautiful position to consciously breathe in, because we can begin to know that the breath itself, the qualities of the breath, the movement of the breathing apparatus, they are directly and profoundly affecting the pulsation of the heart. So I say directly, I mean mechanically and anatomically, but I also mean energetically. So this breathing that we do is affecting the pulsation of your heart. The pulsation of your heart is then affecting everything, all of your cells, all of your organs, all of your processes. The beating of the heart, that rhythmic heartbeat, is an entrainment, and it's entrained with all of these systems. So it's a beautiful relationship. It's a beautiful reflection between the breath, the heartbeat, and all of the depth of your body that is responding to that and entraining with that. And often we don't really spend enough time really feeling, allowing the awareness to saturate into the pulsation of the heart itself. Even if we can't feel it directly, sometimes it takes a great deal of quieting down and moving inward. But we can visualize that we have this, beautiful, amazing, rhythmic, pulsing and vibrating heart that is communicating with every part of the body. So just take a few more breaths and just allow that to be present with you. So from this position of the fetal position, the most natural place to go is to simply support yourself coming up and move into a child position. So you can come into child position without support, with your knees together or open, your forehead down on the back of the hands or a pillow. Or if you prefer, you can come into child's position
leaning the torso on some pillows or a bolster. So again, just trying to maintain a level of comfort and relaxation. But again, this very natural transition from fetal to child's pose. And now we want to not only relax the upper body, but now we'll feel a little natural compression in the knees and the ankles, certainly in the frontal space, a little compression in the digestive area. And I also always remind myself that this is also a forward bend. So check in with the lower back in this mild way and see how you're doing there. And sometimes it's nice to sway the hips a little bit. And we'll come into our child's pose.
And always keeping in mind that this thing that we call the body, this thing that we believe we know something about, this thing that we call the body is really only the sensation of the body. So as we're moving slowly, start to make that distinction. Start to allow the imagery that you hold about your body, the beliefs that you hold about your body, allow them to dissipate as much as possible, and allow your awareness to begin this journey into the sensations. This is what we're exploring. Just as if we were exploring the world is our perceptions of the world, so we would explore perceptions.
And then from this child position, let's come forward onto the belly, and we will lie flat and come into now a backward bend, hopefully rather mild. So we have 3 heights for this. You can come to your forearms. If you want to bring the intensity down a bit, you can pull something under the chest. So this just allows the upper body to relax, and it'll release some of the compression in the lower back. If you want to go a little bit deeper than the forearms on the floor, you can use that bolstering to put the forearms on. So this will then accentuate the backward bend a little bit. Another thing that you could do if you're staying on the forearms, it's very nice just to stay on the forearms. A nice bit of a shoulder opener, and it has some internal rotation, is to just cross at the elbows. So this time I would put the left hand to the right and the right hand to the left. So this is just pulling in the scapula and the shoulders a bit. So any of those 4 options for this position, and then just relax. If your legs are straight back, open them wider than the hips and have a little sway there. So we want to, as we're applying compression, we want to see if we can relax some of that sacral area.
And then allow your breath again to consciously weave into this area. And on the inhalation, allow the breath to absorb into any tension you're feeling. So don't push or struggle with it. This is why this imagery of absorption is so lovely, because it's a gentle movement. So we inhale and allow the breath to absorb into any tension. And on the out breath, just allow everything to soften. If you're holding your head up, that's fine. If the neck gets a little uncomfortable, you can always drop the head down. So nothing wrong with that at all. But see if you can maintain just some awareness. There may be other sensations that are calling you to explore. That's perfectly fine. But this feeling of the breath moving the body, allowing the I don't want to say exaggeration, but the sort of the, let's just say the exaggeration, the inhale exaggerates the compression a bit, the feelings a bit, the discomfort a bit. So that's what we want the breath to absorb into those feelings. And the exhale, we want that discomfort to soften. Okay, let's keep moving in this opening sequence here. So you can pull yourself up back towards your knees, and let's get a hold of the large bolster. And if you don't have a large bolster, just something that is of a nice height and a bit of firmness. So not something too soft where the pelvis is going to cradle in. And what I would like to do is I would like to just bring the pelvic area up on top of this. So put whatever it is you're using, a firm pillow or the large bolster, and just elevate the hips up and place them right on this nice high bolstering. So I didn't mean to put my head on this small bolster. It's really not necessary for this. It's better if the head is flat. And then what we'll do, let's just let the legs relax out. We're going to bring the lower body into a lateral flexion to open the psoas a bit, but let's just keep the legs straight out for a few moments. Back of the head comfortably on the floor, the arms to the side. And just feel that you're allowing gravity itself to pull you into the body. So sometimes we have, especially if there is a restriction or contraction or discomfort, we tend to brace a little bit. We're kind of holding, and we want to just relax any of that holding. And again, this support that we have is not in the lower back. Lower back is up off the floor. The back of the thighs are off the floor. It's clearly the pelvic area. So from the pubic bone down, this is the where we should be on this.
And this language of pelvis and sacrum and hips, these are just pointers. The language is just a very, very small tip of the iceberg. We're really more interested in the energetic dynamic and the felt sense and the emotional tone. So very quickly when we come into one of these poses, we just drop all of the languaging, the imaging, the conceptual frameworks that we hold about body, parts of body, this connected to that, and we just allow ourselves to indulge really in the felt sense. Feel it as closely as you can. Okay, so let's from here, now that the pelvis hopefully has acclimated a bit to this position, we're going to keep the upper body right where it is. So from lumbar up, straight spine, but keeping both knees straight. Let's walk both heels over to the right, just as far as they'll go without bending the knees. And then when you've reached your limit there, if you can just stay there with both heels on the floor, or you could take that left ankle and cross it over the right ankle. And then you may feel a little bit more pulling and tugging in that left area. And this is where we will be for a bit.
The beauty of this long, slow, and deep approach is that we can bring the bones into our meditation. So it becomes very obvious very quickly that we're not simply moving from position to position just to simply open the physical fabric of the body, that there's a reflection and a response from the mind and the emotions, that this interweaving of them becomes closer to us. It's more available for us to investigate. So the meditation that we explore as we're holding the pose is that the meditation is simply to abide as ourselves, just to abide as being exactly as we are. And then we just remain as we are, and allow the mind and the body and the world to appear and disappear without any interference. Allowing the mind, the body, and the world, your environment, to appear and disappear without any interference. And this allows us to very naturally awaken to this conscious witnessing presence. And also to be aware that if we do interfere, that's part of it. There's nothing outside of this inclusivity of abiding as ourself. And one of the things that's particularly powerful about this approach to a somatic meditation is that when there's nothing to do, when the suggestion is just to abide as oneself and allow your experience to just be your experience without interfering, that not having to do anything, not having the urge to change, not having the urge to superimpose something we heard or we read or we believe is an important part of our practice, et cetera, this opens up a different and a verifiable spaciousness. So this is the conscious witnessing presence. This is where we want to rest. This is where we want to allow the process to unfold from. And then we get to what I mean by verifiable is then we get to see, how does this affect my well-being? How does this affect my body? How does this affect my heart? How does this affect my mind when I'm willing to just simply be as I am and not have to interfere with whatever it is? It's quite lovely, not complicated at all. It's a profound simplicity. So if you do have that left ankle crossed over the right ankle, let's uncross it now. This would be a good time to do that. And we'll just begin to walk both heels back to a nice straight spine. And we'll take a few minutes here before we go over to the left. And then let's do that. Let's walk the heels over to the left. Again, keeping the upper body with a straight spine for the upper body and grounded, and walking the heels to the left till you feel a bit of resistance. And then when you do, either stay just as you are with both knees straight. If you'd like to take that right ankle and bring it over the left ankle, that's an option. And we will rest here for a while. And certainly the other thing that we're marveling at, and again, this is always to be self-evident and self-verifying, is the idea. It's not even really an idea, but as we do rest in this abidance of ourselves, and we allow the body and the mind and the world to appear and disappear, to notice how incredibly amazing that it actually does that. So wherever we think we want to put our focus and we're going to hold it there for a long period of time, whatever it is, body, mind, world, it's going to appear to us and then it is going to disappear to us. This is something that brings a fascination to this meditation. This is something that fascinates the yogi. And when we consciously allow that to happen, this is what I mean by this conscious witnessing presence. When we just witness this, when we're conscious of it, it's mind-blowing in a way. And then we get to see how much effort we do apply to trying to make things stationary and static and permanent. So we get to relax from that effort. We get to relax from that effort, and the abidance is in this natural flow of patterns that are appearing and disappearing. And so a yoga asana is a container to explore that. Whether you bring your focus to your thoughts, it doesn't matter, to what may be pulling your attention in your environment, my voice included, or the sensations of the body itself. It doesn't matter. There's an appearing and a disappearing. And this is, we rest in the observing of this, because the content then loses interest because it's going to disappear. How interesting to be a human. allowing whatever you're feeling to soften on the exhale, allowing the inhalation to bring your awareness a little closer, to lean into it, but not force it. But the softening on the exhalation, this is really what we're practicing. So a little residue of tension, it gets to soften each time we exhale. So if you have ankles crossed, this would be a very good time to uncross them. And when that's done, you can then walk the heels back to a straight spine. So how you come out of this, especially with this much applied pressure to the pelvis, is completely up to you. I'll just go through a few suggestions, but any way that works, just make sure you're feeling safe and muscular tension is released. But you could start by bringing one knee up to the chest and drawing it in a bit, and then the other one. So that's a nice play on the hips there. You could bring the knee to the side. You could place the feet on the floor and let the knees sway side to side. You could bring both knees up, bring them toward the chest. And here you could decide you may want to keep bringing the knees up and over, come into a forward bend. Just make sure it's not premature for your lower back. You could also roll to one hip and roll to the other hip. And do this a few times till that muscular tension feels safe. And then when you're ready, you can either just keep rolling and roll off of this bolstering, or you elevate the hips and pull out what you had under there. And let's lie down and take a rest now. I think another interesting thing to keep in mind, and I do believe that this has that this comes out of us, that sensitivity and subtlety that I was talking about, that when we start to mature from techniques and systems and belief systems, that really our growth is more evolving from this, our capacity to be sensitive and subtle. So with that being said, that the grasping a concept, so this is very interesting because as humans, we have this incredible capacity, this incredible conceptual capacity to grasp concepts. And sometimes very, very refined and very, very lofty, very mystical, paradoxical types of concepts. But grasping a concept is not work done. The concept just becomes a tool. Yes. So these epiphanies and realizations and insights, that's a starting point. That's where we really get to apply the sensitivity and really do the work that we need to do. And what's so interesting about this is if we do see that, if we do begin to integrate that these insights and these realizations, and however powerful and blissful they may seem, only give us an opening into doing the work we need to do. That work can be anywhere and any place. Doesn't need to be in a formal yoga, a formal meditation, a formal system. And so then we open up to the way that life is presenting itself. So I believe that the insights and the realizations, wherever they come from, ultimately come from grace. It's very mysterious. And then what we do with them, we use them as a starting point to then do the work we need to do. And it's ongoing. We never really get to end with it. And often an insight will morph into something else, and something else will morph into another realization, and that'll morph into an epiphany, and the epiphany, and it's just a beautiful weaving of our evolution and our growth and our maturity. So we can just really trust that. We can trust that there is a grace and a mystery that is holding us, and we don't have to apply as much control as maybe we sometimes do. Okay, so let's come on up, please. Come on up. Oh, I want to try one of these new pillows. I have some new pillows. So I'm not going to use my big bolster, but if you have the big bolster, you can use that. But I'm going to take one of these fancy new pillows because it's pretty much the same as the big bolster. So what we're gonna start off with a supported square position with this height. So pillows, a couple of pillows if you don't have a bolster, but just something to replicate that. We'll bring the right leg in towards the body. And then we'll put that pillow or bolster in front of the right leg. And we'll bring the left leg up on top of it. And just angle it to let the hip relax and open. So this angle is gonna draw you into interesting places on the left side, as opposed to if we just did a straightforward square. So it was something to enjoy. And then allow the forward bend to be slow and progressive, and let it be long, slow, and deep. Just allow yourself to just melt into it. Each exhale, we soften. If the tension starts to tighten a little bit too much, always good to back out. And this is part of the timing, part of why we give ourselves the luxury of so much time in each of these poses, is because we want the approach to be very, very gentle. We want to feel the nuance of the contractions and the energy. So when we finally do settle, we've come there not from just putting the body in a pose, but following the energetic threads of the body. And then we can relax and quiet down and settle in. And I don't necessarily mean grace in in a mystical or a spiritual way, certainly we could, weave a story around that if we wanted to. But for me, just the pulsing of our hearts, the beating of our hearts, whatever is animating that, because we're not doing it ourselves consciously. So whatever is animating that and animating everything, to me, that's grace. It is just simply grace. Every time my heart beats, it is grace. Every time we take a breath is grace. And this is the balance that the yogi cultivates. The balance that the yogi cultivates is between deeply connecting with and trusting grace, and at the same time directing our activities, sort of taking the gifts of grace and just creatively weaving them into our life, but not taking too much control and not being too concerned with perfectionism, and also trusting that there's always these deeper rhythms that are guiding us. So that's the deep equanimity and the deep balance that the yogi cultivates. And this is precisely why we recognize that our meditation is simply to abide as ourself, because that is the grace. To be oneself, the sense of self is the grace. Okay, so let's roll up from here. And again, nice and slowly. So we take the time to descend and we take the time to emerge, really feeling and allowing some space between the vertebra. And then we will just remove the bolstering, and we're going to keep going forward, but let's take a moment to straighten out that right leg. So well, both legs really. So we'll let both legs relax out. And then we'll keep the left leg extended and we'll bring the right leg in. So we're going to come forward again. One thing I wanted to mention that's kind of nice sometimes is a blanket or a pillow. When we're coming into this position with the left leg out and we come forward, the right arm is usually to support us, especially if we have some bolstering here. We could put both arms if we're using a bolster, but if you're coming to the forearm or lower,
oftentimes the left arm, if it's below the leg or below the knee, it'll pull this right shoulder a bit, or we're not sure where to put it. It might wind up on the shin, but it's nice sometimes to bring a support to the left side and support this left arm, and it'll support this left shoulder. So we can come into this pose with a little bit more, just a little bit more equanimity, and then find your way again, just like the first part of this, find your way in just sensitively by each little layer of sensation. We want to slow down when we start to feel the body contract, because it's these contractions we're interested in.
And actually, you can soften on the inhale as well. This is why we don't breathe into something. You often hear this in other yogas, breathe into it. We're not trying to alter the sensation in any way. We're trying to experience it more vividly, with more clarity and more intimacy. So you can inhale and soften, and you can exhale and soften. Just has uh, a different feel to it. But this is something we always want to be exploring. How is my body responding? How is that particular collection of densities responding when the breath approaches it, when the breath starts to gently permeate it? And likewise, when the breath starts to drain from it, to release out of it. And this intimacy with your own body, this is something that you can cultivate. And what's beautiful about that is the cultivating an intimacy with your body allows you to listen to it more carefully. And listening to it more carefully allows you to cultivate an intimacy. And this is just key for a deeper sense of well-being. Because we can, consult all the experts we want to consult, but ultimately the body is holding the truth. And the body can reveal the truth to you, whatever it is that you want to explore. It doesn't matter if it's a physical exploration or a therapeutic, psychological, emotional, spiritual even. The truth that is woven into the body is this direct intimacy. This is grounding. And so this is also something that let's come out of this before I go on chatting anymore. So let's come on out. Let's just roll up. And I want to take a rest in between these two because we just did two poses there. So let's come on out and just relax, and whichever way is most comfortable for you. If you're called to go back to the fetal position, you can do that, or the child's pose, or lay flat on your back, or whatever feels more comfortable. And this exploration that I'm talking about is really very foundational to this yoga of self-discovery, this yoga of resting in this I amness. Because when I say a sense of self, I'm not talking about the sense of self that we use as our identity, that we present to the world. Obviously, yes, this is obvious. The sense of self that we're exploring here is that conscious presence that is consistent and present and unchanging when all of the body, mind, and world is appearing and disappearing. This is what gets to observe that, yes? So what we're actually doing, the somatic meditation brings us into the energetics of the body, the energy of the body. So if we have an understanding, if we have a realization, if we have an insight that we are this expansive spaciousness of I am, whatever language you want to use. So again, that's the concept. But if we feel separate, then the separation is simply contracted energy. So this is what we're exploring. We're exploring this physical body, this sense of self, this limited identity as just a contraction of energy. And how we free up that energy, how we allow that energy to become incredibly spacious, past the boundaries of disorientation, so we can just rest in this peaceful openness, and then use the contraction creatively. This is then we use our persona, we use our body, we use our mind, we use our heart to function and enjoy the play of life without having to identify. So again, the contraction, the feeling of separation on any of these layers is simply a contraction of energy. And then of course we superimpose stories on that. So we want to feel that energy loosening up. We want to begin to see that the body is only sensation, that the thinking is only thoughts, that the world is only perceptions. It's simple, it's profound, and it's very beautiful. So let us come on up, having that rest while I chatter away. And let's do the other side of this. So we will now bring the left leg in front. And I used my pillow before, I'll use my bolster this time. I'll bring the right leg up on it. Just angle that femur any way that you would like. Relax the upper body, soften the shoulders, drop the head down. Let the lower back soften, draw yourself in. You can support yourself on the bolsters or put the hands on the floor somewhere. And keep that lower back rounding and safe. And let's sink into it. So whether it is persona or it is physical pain, it is still contracted energy. And no amount of conceptual clarity will undo it. And this is very interesting because you may ask, well, what will undo it? I don't know, because anything that I would suggest would be another concept. So we don't want to stay in that trap. So this is where the witnessing presence, the consciousness of our just being comes in, and then we trust that the grace of life will guide us. We trust our intuitive nature to guide us. And this is precisely why we slow down and become very quiet and allow our energy to be drawn inwardly with the understanding that our power and our clarity and our true sense of safety comes from only the silence of the present moment. So we don't need the map any longer. We just become silent. Good. So we'll come out of this and we'll continue. So once you've unfolded up, we'll remove the bolstering that you have, and we'll take a moment to straighten out both legs. And we'll just switch sides. So this time we'll leave the right leg extended. We'll bring the left leg in somewhere along the inside of that right leg. And then again, if you wanted to have some support, it's nice to support that right arm on the right side. And we'll just come forward here and support yourself on the left side with whatever you need. This is just to really relax the right shoulder as much as possible. Just a nice soft descent, slow descent. And so then our yoga invites us to still the mind, gently join it to the breath, to still the body, gently join it to the breath. part of this cultivating this deeper listening is to just realize that really what we're listening to is not describable. So when we're working somatically, when we're working with the actual consciousness of the body, the sensations, language becomes just a severe limitation. So we're not interested in describing it. We're more interested in the experience that is multidimensional, because it is just amazingly multidimensional. So it's actually the experience of being in your body, this collection of sensations, these contractions and expansions are literally not describable. How beautiful is that? So it's not even like learning a new language of the body. It's more like surrendering to this, profound mystery and complexity. And like I was saying earlier, this sense of grace that most of what's happening below the surface is happening without us, without our conscious awareness anyway. So the listening becomes a dance, really. And we can refine that and we can bring a nuance to that. But if you find yourself in descriptive language, just relax that. It's not necessary. We're not interested in control. We're not interested in perfection. We're really not interested in anything. We're interested in allowing the mind to, again, be absorbed into the breath, to, in each pose, rest in stillness, and just allow this conscious witnessing presence to be all pervasive.
So come on up and let's take another rest. So let's lie down and take a rest, please.
I think sometimes that, language, not only is it a limitation when we're exploring ourselves somatically, but I just think in general that language is, certainly entertaining and informative, but when we do become sensitive and we do start to feel the nature of the way that we contract and hold all of our stuff and variety of energies, we can see that communication is far beyond the way that we formulate language, that there's always a dance of energy between two people. There's always an energetic expression and an energetic receptivity. And so what we find with a practice like yoga is the more we open up these pathways, the more we release some of the density of the contractions, then we become more sensitive at that level as well. And when I say language, I'm also, talking about our concepts. Like I was saying earlier, how the clearest of concepts will not allow us to undo these contractions. That this is where we actually feel them, breathe them, live them, release them. Okay, so come on up, please. And I want to come into the lumbar area. Yay. And we're going to use one roll. So everyone will use one roll if you don't have the small bolster. So one roll, and then either the small bolster, or if you don't have that, I just folded up a blanket. I didn't roll, you won't roll the second blanket. You'll make several folds in it. So it sort of flattens out and it looks a bit like the small bolster. Yep. And then whether you have the blanket folded, this is kind of small, you might want a little bigger blanket. But either way, we're going to take one end of your blanket or your small bolster and put it over the roll. So one end of the blanket or bolster is touching the floor. So it's not halfway, it's just curving over it and then extending out. You may want something for your head, or your head may be comfortable on the other end of the bolster or your blanket. And then we're going to sit in front of this support. So the buttocks will stay on the floor. And we're going to allow this curve of your bolster or your blanket to just conform to your lumbar curve. So it's like conforming. And when you come to your forearms, really check in. You may have rolled the roll on the floor up too much, and this is like, I don't feel right, it's not safe. Come out and unroll it a bit. But if you can proceed, then with the feet on the floor, allow the upper body to drape over the bolster so the head touches either the end of the bolster, or like I said, if you need more under the head, please do that. And then when everything is stable in the upper body, then you can relax the legs out. Oh yeah, so it just should feel like, yes, this is supportive. It's conforming to the lumbar curve, but there's just enough compression to allow the muscles and the ligaments and all of the restrictions to receive this lovely pressure. Oh, yeah. And then at some point, we begin to see that the space of the position, the asana, allows us the time to start to recalibrate our sensitivity. So we may be feeling particularly contracted in the physical body. We may be feeling contracted in the space of our heart. Certainly, we can feel contracted with the thinking process, or just in relation to the flow of life. And so having the space, having the time to contemplate, this is where we can start to recalibrate our sensitivity. So it's not about changing a story. It's not about gaining more information, perfecting a technique. It's simply intuiting where I'm feeling contracted, where this density is collecting. And then the recalibration, the ongoing listening to the sensitivity allows us then to make space, to make space for a new possibility. This is what they would call in the Taoist tradition, doing, not doing. This is the meditation of simply abiding as oneself. And the sensitivity is the lack of interference with all that is arising and all that is disappearing. And the sensitivity is to see that whatever the concept, whatever the belief, however sweet the concept, however lofty and refined and alluring, that it's still just a concept. However entangled and grounding and orienting the story, it's still just a story. So as we can let go of the beliefs and the beautiful concepts and the interwoven stories, all of that content, we can come into a simple awareness of being aware and be more interested in just the simple beauty that we are aware. And what we're aware of, sometimes we can be interested, but the deeper contemplation is simply being aware of being aware. And this awareness is the ground of our being, is the I am-ness. So before you disturb the position, let's just breathe into the entire body, letting the inhale absorb, letting the inhale open, and again, letting the exhalation soften. And see if you can take the next couple of breaths in just a very seamless way. So there's no boundary or stopping between the exhale and the inhale, and the inhale and the exhale. Just almost like a waterfall. The inhale just waterfalls right into the exhale, and the exhale waterfalls back up to the inhale. So no hesitation in the breath, just a relaxed smoothness. Feeling the entire body being permeated with oxygen. And then when you're ready, you can put your feet on the floor, and again, coming out of these very slowly and very intuitively. You can sway your knees side to side. You can bring your knees up towards your chest if you like. Roll the shoulders. And then we'll slowly come out of this and we will take a rest. Oh, excuse me. One of the things that we get to look at, and I've actually been thinking about this quite a bit, is the sort of the energies of the micro and the macro, and how often we can spend so much time on the micro, and that consciousness in a way is a bit of sort of like a radar detector, and a good thing that it is, that consciousness is looking for danger often, looking to keep us safe. So it's able to bring focus into our environment and focus into our environment. So this is very micro, but at the same time, we are able to relax out of that and allow ourselves to expand, especially when we feel safe. I think necessarily to feel safe when we don't need that function, and see that just the energy of life is just streaming through us always, in terms of breath and temperature and food, stimulation. And that at that level, when we can just feel that consciousness doesn't need to micromanage and focus and keep us safe, that this life energy that is streaming through us is more just patterns. And this is what we are. We are these patterns. We are these energy pathways, and they are layered, and they are a matrix, and they intermingle, they're interwoven. So it's very interesting to have this approach where we initially come into very, very specific points of discomfort, very specific densities. And that's very, very micro. But how then do we relax out of that? And how do we allow these energies to uh, have a connection to the entire body, to the entire physical body, the entire energy body, and beyond? And to see that the patterns of our individuality are in no way separate from the patterns of life itself, the weather and the stars, if you will, the oceans and the waves. So very, very interesting to explore that and not feel that we are stuck in the micro and our consciousness is the only function is to keep us safe as sort of a radar device, but to see that we are safe. We cultivate this safety. An asana is a safe place to allow the breath between the micro and the macro. So we can allow ourselves to expand. And then we get to see which patterns may be so repetitive and so blocked that this is that contraction of energy that I was talking about, and which patterns are opening. And it's just a lovely way to contemplate the nature of our beingness. Okay, so please come on up and come on up. And what I would like you to do is to, if you have the small bolster, you could just use the small bolster. If you don't have the small bolster, just again, fold. I'm folding my bigger blanket. You just fold a blanket so it is equal to this. So either the small bolster or a blanket that's folded, or if you like, we're going to put this in the mid back eventually. You could put the small bolster on top of a blanket. So this is going to give you a little bit more, maybe a lot more compression and expansion in the rib cage. So any of these that you're going to use, any of these suggestions will be fine. And then just put that behind you. So we're not going to use it right away. And what I would like to do is come forward and bring the soles of the feet together. If your hips are not so good with this, you can bring some support under the knee or the thigh in any way that works for you. And let's slowly come forward from here. So just a nice relaxed pose. And again, remember that when you start to feel it, you're already doing it. You always have the option to withdraw a bit, relax back in, withdraw a bit. So you want to find the appropriate depth where you can really relax. Again, relaxing and also to feel safe. So this space of the asana to recalibrate our sensitivities, but also to explore this energy of the micro contraction of safety and self and all of the things that contract into that, and the exploration of the macro and just the streams of life and patterns and energies that we just naturally are. And so again, yes, I'm making a concession to language, and I do understand its limitation. But what I'm suggesting is that you are a pattern. You are a pattern or patterns of life. Just like a rose is a pattern, just like fire is a pattern, wind is a pattern. Life expresses itself through patterns, these ever changing, expressive, tremendously and amazingly harmonious patterns. And as soon as we apprehend chaos, it just unfolds into harmony. So just a lovely way to feel that. This is a somatic feeling, a felt sense. This is not an intellectual investigation. This entrainment that I was talking about from the pulsation of the heart, this is sending out patterns. This entrainment is patterns to all the systems of your body.
So from here, we'll come on up. And just one more thing before we go back. So let's just open the legs out just to a nice width. I'm not suggesting a full straddle, but just a bit past hip width. And we'll come forward again. So open up the back of the knees and the hamstrings, and we'll just come here for a bit. Okay, so let's come on up from here as well. And then remember that little bolster or blanket you put behind you. So where this is intentionally meant to be a little milder than the way that we usually do this mid-spine opening. So if you want to, like I suggested, if you want to put it on a blanket and build it up a little bit more, but having it behind you will put the feet on the floor. And you can place this anywhere in the upper back. Just don't have the shoulders on it. So I want to have so my arms can go side to side above the bolster. So anywhere below that until you get to the lower back. But it's right. I have both my shoulder blades on it, which at this height is very appropriate. So you could go a little bit lower and then relax the head back. If you did supplement with a blanket, you may need something for your head so your neck doesn't strain. We just want it to be a relatively mild pressure so we can just really let those mid-back muscles relax.
And again, seeing if you can allow your breath to be somewhat seamless. So the inhalation is just like a waterfall of air flowing into the exhalation, the end of the exhalation, a waterfall of air flowing back up. So it's nice to just smooth the breath out sometimes, and it feels very seamless, because often we miss that transition, or that's where some restriction in the breath is. We want to feel an evenness in the length of the inhale and the exhale, a calming of the breath, but especially that smoothness as they transition. I think another way to explore this idea of grace is from a place of trust. And this is an interesting exploration, because I think that if we're really honest with ourselves, we can, look back through the shadows of our past and see that we really didn't get ourselves to this present moment, that we just got here, that there was an unfolding, and there continues to be this unfolding. So the trust that I'm talking about is just you may call it a blueprint, that we all have this blueprint of life, just like an acorn has a blueprint when it's planted, and it doesn't know how it's going to become an oak tree. It just follows its blueprint. So there's a certain quality of trust that's woven into this grace. Grace is trust, in that we all have this blueprint, and how that unfolds, it unfolds. And we have the opportunity always, we have the opportunity of yoga to become more conscious of that. And it's the consciousness that allows us to enjoy it. It's the consciousness that allows us to weave creativity into the unfolding of the blueprint. So grace and trust intermingling and really, really existing in this container of mystery. And it allows us to relax. It allows us to really enjoy this energy streaming and these patterns streaming and this beautiful harmony. So we're going to consider moving out of this lovely position. You're welcome to stay here at this point, because we will come out of it and move into either a final relaxation of your choice, or you could sit up with me if you like. So just take your time, make any adjustments that you need to make, and we'll just relax a bit in silence. When you realize that you are nothing, that is wisdom. When you realize that you are everything, that is love. Namaste.